Welcome to the webinar. This is Richie. So, today we're going to be talking about data and AI products. And to begin with, you might be asking, what exactly are data and AI products? Turns out this is slightly tricky, so you need to concentrate. So, with an AI product, it typically means that you've got some kind of software product that makes heavy use of AI, like a fraud detection tool or a chatbot. And so you might think a data product is just a software product that contains a lot of data. So something like a product recommendation system. And sometimes it means that, but also data products can also mean treating data like a product. So you provide quality guarantees on your data set, like making sure it has a particular format and the data is up to date and it's available and things like that. So very confusing. Both these ideas are very important. So in this session, we're going to discuss both, and we're going to try not to confuse you too much. We're going to spend a bit of time at the start of the session talking about why you need to care about each of them. And I have two incredible guests for you. So first up, we have Sagar Paul. He's a senior VP of enterprise sales and solutions at the Modern Data Company. And Sagar's got 30 years of experience across sales, product, and data engineering. And he's on a mission to bring product thinking to the world of data and drive productivity gains for technologists and businesses. So previously, Sagar was director and global head of solutions at ThoughtWorks, and he was the global leader of client engagement at New Sigma. Next up, we have Logan Clark, an associate director at Moody's Analytics, where he runs Moody's initiatives in creating AI products to provide access to financial risk solutions as a service. He's got extensive experience in developing and implementing financial models for banks and international economic development. And previously, Logan was a senior consultant at EY and an impact evaluation specialist at the International Finance Corporation. So, welcome both of you. I'd really love to hear what you have to say about data and AI products. So, since I gave a slightly mangled description of what they are, let's try and get into some detail about like what these things actually are, and hopefully you can explain better than I did. Saga, to begin with, do you want to talk about what is a data product to you?
Sure. And the definition of data product varies across the industry. It's a new concept for all practical purposes, but I'll try and define it in the best way possible. So, for us, a data product is an integrated and self contained combination of data, metadata, semantics, and templates. It also includes access logic centered implementation for tackling specific data and analytics scenarios and for its reuse. But it also needs to be consumption ready. And when we say it needs to be consumption ready, it means that it needs to be trusted by consumers, it needs to be updated by engineering teams, it needs to be approved for use and hence governed. And so data products typically are used for data sharing, data monetization, for analytics, and application integration. So that's in a nutshell what we believe is a data product.
Okay, so it's going beyond just this is a table in a database to this is something that other people can actually use. I like that. All right, and Logan, how do you define an AI product?
Absolutely, yeah. Moody's itself is very much in the business of selling data products. So I could tell you all about data products. Sagar provided a great overview. I would just reinforce that. Gone are the days where a company like Moody's would sell an industry data set, print it to a CD-ROM, mail it out, and then the minute you print that to a CD-ROM and mail it, it starts becoming stale and its value declines. So I would even venture to say that soon are gone to be the days where the primary method of accessing a data set involves going to the vendor's website and downloading the data. Right now, I think the expectation is, as Sagar mentioned, that a data product be something that be continuously updated and even made available seamlessly via API. So that's the way that I, as a consumer of data products, even internally within my company, consume data products and link my front-end applications to the data in terms of the plumbing. And that's the way I think clients are increasingly expecting to be able to interact with their data products. Data data is rapidly evolving, and so it has to be curated, and you have to be able to guarantee to the user that at any given time they can, in real time, access the latest and greatest version. And the only way to do that is with the infrastructure I just described. So that's becoming an expectation in the market for sure.
May I jump in over there? Just to add, from an engineering perspective, to be able to get to all of the stuff that we just spoke about, it includes data, metadata, the code that brings the data, and the recipe that takes the data forward from there on usage, and the infrastructure. So, which includes the provenance and governance of data itself. And obviously, Logan added, it needs to be fresh all the time. So that's a huge ask from a data product.
Okay, so lots of important things there. So you need to make sure your data is up to date, so it's fresh, and you need to make sure it's got high quality, and you need to know where it's come from. So that's the provenance, and I guess that there's all sorts of metadata in there to tell you like where it came from and who made it and on what it's all about. So not just a data set; it's a data set that you actually use. That's brilliant. Logan, we were talking about AI products as well. So how are AI products different from data products then?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's a tricky one to answer because not everyone is necessarily clear on what the definition of AI is, much less than an AI product. So let's maybe take a minute there to just sort of level set. I think for a lot of folks, maybe not all the folks on this call, if you're joining this call, you're probably already fairly savvy in the world of AI, but many people would associate sort of the latest generation of AI technology with the commercialization of the large language model and sort of the entry into the market of folks like ChatGPT, right? So various variants of AI have existed for years in different formats, but the innovation here was to be able to bring all of these sort of deep learning algorithms to the user to be able to receive a prompt, right, and then produce a response iteratively until it becomes refined, and it's a response that's not necessarily programmed, but it's able to learn from a vast array of data that the model's been trained on. So in that respect, I would say an AI product is, it's a product that is able to interact, ingest large quantities of data, say from a data product, which we just defined, whether it's structured or unstructured, right? Receive a prompt from a human being in text form, in the human language, then go through that data, whether through a sort of retrieval augmented or RAG process or a built-in sort of base offering, and synthesize all that information and distill it down to the key points per the prompt and produce a response, again, in human language that can then be fed in ultimately to inform a business decision that is practical and useful in helping companies and users increase their efficiency and reach their objectives.
Okay, I like that. So it's basically it's sort of AI built into your software or whatever product you're creating. Okay, that's nice. So let's talk about like some good examples of data and AI products. So I'd love to hear some success stories. Sagar, can you talk about some examples of successful data products?
Sure.
We can. Hey, yeah, you just froze for a moment, but go ahead.
Sure. So for a long time, people have spoken about Customer 360. And Customer 360 has been, for a long period of time, being able to take on use cases to understand customers better in terms of customer segmentation, upselling, cross-selling, taking on those kind of valuable use cases for sales, marketing purposes, sometimes using those to understand whether the customer is likely to invoke warranty or not. So, if you think about, say, a high-tech manufacturer, you have Customer 360. You could also have Device 360, where the high-tech manufacturer, which is, sold laptops and servers and so on and so forth, are looking at devices and are figuring out condition monitoring. You map the two together, you come up with another data product called Warranty 360. So those are some of the examples of good implementation and places where we've seen business value. But more importantly, the the outputs and the outcomes that the business needs are not changing. It is either revenue upliftment, a market share gain, cost reduction. From a tech standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, this used to take a long, long time for organizations to put this all together. So the definition of a data product may have been useful. Today, that is changing with product thinking put on data. Now, when we say that is changing, it essentially promises to compress the timelines it takes to engineer those data products. Earlier, it used to be point to point, no longer the case. Tech has evolved to get you that. So you are able to actually get more use cases out of the data products. Um, so those are some of the values or valuable outcomes that we're seeing out of data products being in vogue right now.
Okay, yeah. So I think things like upselling and cross-selling data and just generally getting more money out of your customers. Data's been involved in that for a long time. The idea of data products is it's going to reduce the time to get to having something usable then, I guess. Okay, nice. Logan, do you have any examples of great data products or AI products? I'm sure you're building lots of these at Moody's.
Oh yeah, lots in the pipeline there, and lots on the roadmap still to go. So plenty of work to be done. But yeah, we do have some successes. As I mentioned, Moody's has long been in the business of data products. Only more recently in the business of data-fed sort of AI products. But we have brought to market several already in this latest wave of AI kind of product development. So maybe I'll give an example. Sort of starting at the upstream end of things with data products. A lot of people in the clients of ours in the financial sector, typically banks, come to us because we're not a single bank. We work with lots of different bank clients. We have a sort of broader view of the banking industry. And so we have data that covers sort of a lot of different geographical, sectoral, asset size-wise contexts that banks operate in. And so by virtue of that sort of broader view and that better, more complete data set, we're able to simply develop better, more accurate predictive models for, say, purposes of credit risk prediction, probability of default models and such. And so a big part of that is that we have data on default outcomes, which if you're a well-managed bank, by definition, you don't have very much of, and therefore you have struggled to develop a model to predict. So we have great data, and then we have a lot of other kind of industry databases, such as Orbis. I think there's 500 million different companies represented in this data set, financials for those companies, a whole host of other drivers of potential credit risk behind those companies, right? And so then the challenge is, okay, how do we create an AI product that leverages all of the value of that upstream data to inform a downstream business decision, right? And so one of the products that we've released in the market recently is an automated credit memo, right? If you're familiar with sort of commercial lending, sort of preparation of a credit memo is a very time-intensive process, very iterative process, involves multiple sort of rounds of presentation before a committee to be able to pass this process. And the key document that is sort of the focus of this is this credit memo, which outlines the lending opportunity and provides a whole host of background information about a potential borrower. So their profile, their background, their area of business, their business model, their market positioning, a sort of SWOT analysis of different strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats they face in the market, and obviously some financial analysis of their financial statements. All of that, just preparing it to get to a point where it can pass committee, extremely time intensive. We've developed a product that automates that really from end to end, sort of at the push of a button, pulls in all of the data from our data sources, and can actually generate, using large language models, the text narrative to walk the audience through a full picture of what this company does, who's managing the company, their qualifications, its position in the market, its financial health, and then ultimately getting to a fuller picture of whether or not the bank would want to extend the loan to this type of institution. So it's one of those areas where certainly ripe for a product like a large language model to fully automate end to end. We've had clients come to us really expressing the fact that not only has it decreased the amount of time, but it's also increased the quality of these documents, because now we're able to look at new dimensions of risk that simply weren't folks using kind of a more manual process didn't have the bandwidth to explore. So it's increasing efficiency, decreasing the time it takes, but also increasing the quality using the upstream data and the AI technology.
Okay, that's really fascinating. So you got the sort of different stages in the workflow then. So towards the end, you're wanting to make decisions, and this is where the sort of the AI products can be useful. You want like better predictions in order to make the good decisions. But in order to get those better predictions, you need the data products beforehand to guarantee that you've got high quality data to feed into the AI models. And so you need both of these things working together. All right. And I like that you mentioned that normally people don't have the bandwidth to just ask the interesting questions. Like there's so many different data sets, so many interesting questions you can answer. So you need a lot of this sort of automation there in order to make sure that people just focus on asking good questions. All right. Excellent. So let's talk a bit about how you actually go about building these things. So first of all, I'd like to know who is involved. Sagar, do you want to talk me through like which teams or roles tend to be involved in creating data products?
Sure. If you see if you look at a business use case and you look at a set of business use cases in a certain domain, the data consumers are a significant population in thinking about what data sets are needed. But data sets are not quite the only thing that will help you in making a data product. You really need to pull the data. You need to make sure they are trustworthy. You need to make sure you have the observability, that it is kept fresh, and it is fresh, the one that you're looking at. The right people need to have access to that data. So typically the data consumers would be people who are writing an ML model, who are writing an API to serve it up to someone within the organization, or maybe even creating a report for that matter. But within the data engineering organization, you would have a bunch of data developers coming together to sit down with the data consumer, and typically there would be a data product owner or a data steward, himself or herself, who manage the domain of that particular area where the data products are being created. They are a part of that conversation. When they are a part of that conversation collaboratively, they can come up with the right data product that is the right set of inputs that are coming in from the right places. It's not too large to become unwieldy, but it's not too small that it only serves only one use case at a time. It should serve a family of use cases in some way or form. It should make sure that it is well contained, and it is also independently valuable per se. So if you think about a Moody's data product, it targets a certain customer or a certain class of customers. It is not just available for everybody to use. And when data products are basically automated for its consumption, you also need to make sure they're properly governed. They have policies underneath, which basically means that a certain section of your data consumers will have only access to a certain part of the data, whether it is a fine grained access controlled, or it could be broad. It could be on a basis of a few columns, or it could be on a basis of a few attributes. I'm the sales rep for Midwest. I should not be looking at a data product which has customer transactions and histories for the West Coast, for that matter. So how can I look at that same data set for myself. So governance and all of those, those kind of people also obviously get involved. Data quality folks get involved. People who understand security, policies, infrastructure. So it's a combination of all of these people that helps put together the data product. And it wouldn't be wrong to say that it's at this point in time, it's a bit chaotic and it's a bit messy. It's just we're just getting started on this new journey for all practical purposes.
Okay, that's interesting. So it sounds like this is primarily a data engineering task, then just working out which bits of data need to be fed to fed into the product, in what format, and with what permissions for whoever's consuming it. Okay, Logan, is that your opinion as well? Like, do you agree that data products are mostly about data engineering, or are there other people involved?
Yeah, so maybe this is a point where I might sort of might beg to differ slightly from what Sagar mentioned. I would say yes, in some ways, the teams and the role, the team structure, and sort of functional roles that you need to put in place for the creation of a successful AI product are no different from the type of team structure you have in place for a traditional software product, right? You need to have people that understand, the engineers, the cloud ops folks who can build your successful foundation in the back end and all your plumbing. You need to have data architects who understand the data layer, and you have to have UX and UI designers to be able to build a user interface that's intuitive for users to interact with. Yes, all of that absolutely holds, and nothing certainly would get started without good engineers at the foundation. But I might say one sort of distinction perhaps with kind of the world of AI product development that that sort of maybe owes to the fact that this is just such a brand new technology, one, and then secondarily because it's a technology with such broad potential scope of application that I think it behooves companies to not sort of pigeonhole sort of one group within one silo as sort of the champion for AI product development, and then everyone else sort of keep doing business as usual. I mean, for AI, this generation of AI to truly realize its potential, it really has to transform business more fundamentally and more holistically. And so where I've seen success is implementing almost a sort of hub and spoke type of a model where you have sort of this, in Moody's, we have this notion of 14,000 innovators. So 14,000 people in the company, everyone is an innovator. Everyone should be experimenting and deploying and implementing some element of this new technology in their day-to-day business, whether it's just purely internal or for a product. And I'll tell you, nobody came to me when I started my journey developing these type of products and said, "Here are your marching orders. We've done this market research and we decided we need to build this product, and here's your deadlines. Get to work." I raised my hand and said, "Look, it looks like there's maybe different ways we could apply this to our work and maybe actually turn it to potential clients." So that I think is that sort of culture of innovation and initiative is very important, regardless of what your background is, whether it be engineering or otherwise. But I will say this: you have to have people that know what they're doing involved in this, right? An idea without an execution plan is not really worth much. And so then again, it's a question of going back to who are your technical experts or your engineers that are going to help with this. Where I've seen success is again, is going back to this hub and spoke analogy. At the hub, you have sort of a center of excellence, right? Of people who understand what large language models are. They understand deep learning. They understand that stuff better than I do, right? And they can delve into the details. They can help with any RAG processes, fine tuning, help really set the table in terms of the AI technology and make it useful. They can help onboard folks like me with ideas and more of a subject matter expertise to these models, help us get set up with the endpoints and the proper access keys, all that kind of thing from a technical standpoint. But then also there's this mix of, this kind of role is becoming more popular, this sort of evangelist type of a role where they're also responsible for really motivating the use. So hosting, regional hackathons and open office hours where people can tune in and get the latest details on the new technology that's being released, help us sort of separate the noise from what we need to pay attention to. There's just so much hype, right? How do we know really what the important details are? So to have that group of AI experts at the hub, I think is really important if you're going to really try to spur this kind of grassroots innovation and realize the really transformative potential of this technology across a large organization.
Okay, so just to make sure I've understood this, your idea is that you have this hub, which is sort of a central team of, I guess, technical experts. This can be data experts or AI experts, and then the spokes. These are going to be like, I guess, commercial teams, and then or domain experts in different areas, and they're going to work together. So if you've got, I don't know, like a sales data product, you can have the sales team on that spoke, and then they're going to work with the central hub.
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting. All right. Okay, so let's talk about leadership. Like, who is typically in charge of overseeing any data products that are created? Sagar, do you want to take this?
Yeah, and this almost borders around the roles of the CIO, the CTO, the chief digital officer, the chief data officer, or somebody from business. For all practical purposes, given the current, sort of seismic shifts that we are seeing in the industry today, what's very likely to happen within the organization is someone or some personality takes on the leadership, and the team follows, and the team basically um, uh, uh, harvests the capabilities of the leaders impact area for all practical purposes. But what I have noticed up until now is that the business leader takes on the role of the data product per se, primarily because this brings into the consideration of distributed data. And so data is no longer going to be valuable if people are keeping it centrally and trying to manage it centrally. So there is this huge shift towards distributed data management. Federation is the order of the day, which basically means that a lot of the basic understanding and the value of data is in the edges, wherever the data is produced. So the data producers and the data consumers are sitting in the edges. And so in many cases, what we have noticed is even the data engineering capabilities are going towards the edge. And that's where the conversations around the fabric and the mesh sort of come about. But to be clear, for all practical purposes, the owners, the data product owners, are the people who are essentially owning the outcomes of all of the data that are going to come out. And I think that is a very, in one report, or if I recollect right, which was written by Tom Davenport, and he spoke about super leaders, super tech leaders, and they are business leaders with super tech capabilities, and they are the ones who are able to push the needle and the envelope on what data products can do within and outside enterprises.
Okay, that's interesting. So I thought your answer was going to be it's going to be the chief data officer who's in charge of data products. The chief AI officer is going to be in charge of AI products. But actually, you're saying that going to be the business leaders. They're going to be the person who's kind of end accountable for each of these things, just because it needs to have some business relevance. Otherwise, there's no point. So it's absolutely fascinating. Logan, do you also is that what you've seen as well, or do you have a different take?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The sense I get, I can speak, to my organization, but the sense I get more broadly is that housing going back to sort of my idea of a center of excellence or a core engineering team, housing that within, say, a unit that reports up to the CIO or even the CFO, probably not likely to generate as much success, right? Housing this type of group within a cost center will leave less appetite for the type of experimentation that needs to happen. The processes for developing a product at kind of the cutting edge of this new technology will necessarily involve some fits and starts, some failure, and then your exhilarating success punctuated, here and there. But it's a bit of a different type of dynamic than might exist with a traditional software rollout or a finance function. And so I would say you do need to have this type of a unit primarily responsible for institutionalizing AI and bring those products to market, reporting to someone like the COO or a chief product officer.
Okay. So that's interesting. The point you mentioned about if you're developing these things in a team that's a cost center, then you're not going to want to spend much on it. So if it's in a commercial team, then they're bringing in money, so they've got more incentive to actually spend some money, iterate, and get a great product. Office politics is very odd. Sagar, you wanted to add to that?
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to have a clarification on this. So the data product owner is typically from business. Everybody else provides services in some way or form to create the products. And it is also possible that a significant part of the cost of the product itself is baked into one of the cost centers. But that doesn't necessarily mean the ownership and accountability shifts. The ownership and accountability of the data, which is innate to the data product, still has to be retained, because the owner needs to know how it needs to be governed. The owner needs to know what the constituents are. They know how it can be potentially used and also care from abuse. So that's really the distinction. And over a period of time, I think, as the experimentation goes on, it will be more towards tech. I think it'll shift towards the business pretty quickly and closer to as we are heading down the trough of disillusionment.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. So the product owner is going to be someone in a business team, but there are also going to be other people from technical teams there. So is it going to be a mix? All right. So suppose your CEO comes to you like, we need to create some data products. I want to know, like, what's the first thing you want to build? Like, are there any sort of typical like high value data products or easy to make data products? Like, what's easiest to create? Or where do you begin? Logan?
No, absolutely. It's a great question. So I would say there's lots of simple use cases for AI product applications, and there's lots of high value use cases, but there are far fewer use cases that are both simple and high value.
That's not disappointing.
And that's part of the trick, right? Is sort of identifying from the outset what those are, and also not getting bogged down in trying to sort of boil the ocean and survey every possibility before you even get started. So, my recommendation would probably be if you're on a team that's just getting started in this AI product journey, would be sort of take a simple and contained use case, perhaps one that's purely for internal purposes, and where that sort of limited scope will allow kind of a closer access to the source data that you're looking to synthesize with an AI product and the output, so that you can provide a little bit more human kind of judgment and control over the accuracy of the output. So we have applications from kind of early on in our experimentation with this, where we gave AI sort of a very short leash, and we dictated the content and flow and the curation of the sort of product output, and we're very specific about where the AI would come in and where it would stop. So there was never really a difficulty in tracing AI output from origin. Right? There's since been technology built into a lot of the language models themselves, where citations come sort of baked into the response, and it makes that process also easier. But that sort of limited scope, again, helps sort of build trust and confidence in the organization. This is something you can do, and you can branch out, give the AI a little bit more leash, so to speak. And the other thing I'd say is there's often with a new technology, say like large language models, AI, there's an impulse to say, we've got this new technology, let's build something new from scratch. If you have the resources to do that, go knock yourself out. Obviously, there are cases where that is necessary, but if you're from a small on a smaller team looking to get started, I would say there's a lot of value, just as much, if not more, from the initial stage in introducing this technology into a already existing software or an existing process that existed for some BAU purpose, rather than say trying to start completely from scratch.
Okay, so that's interesting. So, given that we can't do like simple and high value at the same time very often, you probably want to start with simple just to make sure you have something that works and you learn how to do stuff, and then maybe you can work up towards those high value use cases. I also like the idea that you maybe start with the business as usual processes because it's something you're doing a lot of, and therefore you're going to get a bit more value if you're automating things there. All right.
Yeah, it's a matter of sort of balancing the achievable result versus the sort of moonshot attitude. And like a lot of things in life, it's not a either or proposition. I think if you're a company, if I were, the CEO of a company, I might not necessarily give that same advice. I'm speaking from my perspective. From a company enterprise-wide perspective, you have to do both. So you got to have some people that are working on the moonshot. But like I said, if you're someone who's just starting out, that's probably, you might not want to dive into the moonshot type of use case just yet. But someone at your company with more experience probably is or should.
All right. So maybe like try the highest value thing that you think you can actually successfully complete. All right. Nice. Okay. So let's go through the workflow for this. Sagar, are there any particular like steps that you take in order to create a data product? Like where do you begin and what's the workflow?
So I'm going to riff off of the discussion that we just had and answer this question, and they're all linked, by the way. So in plus one to everything that Logan said and you synthesized, I'd add two more variables to this. Find use cases that are urgent and critical for business. If they are not urgent and critical for business, you will you will have experimentation endlessly, and you will not put in a rigor to the process as well. Uh, so it's important that you pick something which is valuable and urgent and obviously simple enough. So you're basically talking about a thin slice. Now, coming to your second point, which is, so how do we get started? And this is what you should not do. And this is typically, where tech leaders sort of falter and engineering leaders falter. And this is a big place where vendors would like you to apply their product like a 1 inch thick and a mile wide across the entire enterprise. So maximize the number of licenses that can be sold. That's not the right approach for an enterprise to take. The right approach for an enterprise to take, in my opinion, is take the high value, highly urgent, highly simple, connect to the sources as it is needed, and then scale from there on in adjacent areas. And if you are doing that, then not only do you have a proof of value to begin with, you're not experimenting and noodling endlessly. So that is my approach that obviously I tell my clients, and obviously to my peer product vendors as well, who end up becoming a part of the logo fixture that an enterprise has, saying I use this product as well and that product as well, and they don't add much value. It's just sitting there. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you said there's a temptation just to have lots of, I guess, simple, maybe half-baked data products for like all the data sets you have, but that's probably a bad approach, and you just want to pick and
Yeah.
be very choosy about which.
So if you think about data quality, for instance, I have a data quality tool, I have a data governance tool. I'll try to apply it on everything across all data sources. Don't. Think about what's the use case that you're trying to. So pick any technology that you are trying to use to implement some of these governance and provenance needs for data products. Don't go all across the board and spend 2 years till the business starts seeing value. Give it in 2 months and show, and so that it sits in production, it's a proof of value. Then you can sort of replicate it either adjacently or pick another area so another business owner can gain value out of it. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, nice. And related to this idea of like what projects you pick in order to get started, I'm presuming you have to put some processes in place to make sure that you can successfully create a data product or an AI product. Logan, what sort of processes do you need in order to be successful in this?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the model I described, there's a lot of sort of spontaneity in kind of coming up with the original idea. So like I said, I started my kind of endeavors in AI product development, experimenting, introducing this technology as a kind of enhancement to applications we developed that were kind of data applications with automated sort of processes and a lot of sort of downstream value add that this technology was able to add. I haven't necessarily come up with a magic formula for a process that you can follow every time. I would say, kind of echoing what Sagar mentioned, what I alluded to earlier, when it comes to focusing on kind of what to develop, yes, you have to have a credible claim to market demand and viability, right? There's simply no substitute for that. Whatever you're building has to address a customer pain point and make their life easier, more efficient, and more productive, and so that has to be clear. But I found that there's a little bit of analysis paralysis that can set in. Again, if you try to be so systematic about this, you end up sort of never putting pencil to paper. I'm sort of thinking about the what Steve Jobs famously said when he was asked whether Apple products sort of routinely underwent sort of focus groups and market research like that. And he said, people don't know what they want until you show it to them, essentially. And so there's a little bit of that attitude. I think, our clients come to us because they're looking for guidance from us on what they need to a certain extent. They don't necessarily always know. And so you do have, flexibility to sort of really define the scope of your product. And if you can articulate its use case, clients will want it and will buy in. So I think that the focus, again, alluding to what Sagar had mentioned, is come up with a minimum viable product in a shorter time period that you can put in front of clients, get some alpha users on board, demonstrate its value, and then the additional resources will come. And then as you scale up, the formulas and the processes, the formalized processes for bringing it to market will be put in place. But so much of this is new right now that, as Sagar mentioned earlier, it's a cross-disciplinary effort. People are raising their hands from different teams, and there isn't necessarily room for thinking about how we hierarchically define roles. It's more collaborative, spontaneous, and I think conducive to this kind of hub and spoke type of collaborative model that I mentioned earlier.
Okay, so it sounds like the hard part there is getting that product market fit and getting feedback from customers to see if it works, but maybe they don't know exactly what they want. Sagar, I can see you're itching to jump in here. I can tell you've got opinions. Go on.
So at the heart of it, it is product thinking applied to data. So whatever worked when you created or when you thought of creating a product, as in your product playbook, works for data products as well to a large extent. So what we have at Modern is a data product playbook. So that product playbook essentially is an adaptation of how a product canvas looks like. Whenever you are creating a product, you have to fill in several parts of that canvas to make it fill up all of the necessary elements that Logan and I shared in earlier. Um, but in doing so, you have to now align with a larger set of people who are now raising hands that they can contribute, etc. So now your workshop is going to look larger, and they will have more people in it. It'll be messier, and what you need is a conductor, a good facilitator, who basically makes sure that all of the parties have been heard, but only the most critical and most urgent and the most valuable piece goes out as a minimum viable product. The additional challenge that happens on a data product is that data debt piles on, much like software debt piles on onto software products. And data debt is actually a bigger challenge than software debt, if you've encountered that term over there. And software debt essentially happens with code that is spaghetti code that has been written over a period of time. You are adding one more thing, one more feature takes much longer. Or for instance, something breaks, you do not know, you take longer to fix, and so on and so forth. So that's what software debt sort of leads you into. Imagine now that you will have software debt plus some old data which is beyond your software as debt, adding on to this particular new product that you're looking at. Now, managing this data debt is going to be a bigger challenge, which is larger maintenance issues. So when you are creating the product, you have to think about how you're going to manage it and maintain it over a period of time. So building products for not just engineering it or experimenting with it, putting it into production and making it for managing maintenance are very different things. So those kind of people also need to be a part of it. I know it does bring in a larger drag in the process, but for it to be successful, um, we need to think about data debt as well.
That actually sounds kind of horrible. It's like we got all the standard data problems, and then we're just importing a lot of like software development problems as well, like having to deal with maintenance and things like that. Okay, so twice the challenges. All right. So we've already got a few minutes before we go to audience questions. So I'd like to talk a little bit about hype before we wrap up. And so it seems like in the last few years, there's been so much AI hype. Generative AI can do anything apparently, and so there's a lot of pressure to put generative AI into like almost every bit of software you can think of, whether or not it needs to be there. So, Logan, can you talk about how can you avoid this hype trap for AI?
Yeah, so I mentioned that one of the functions that this sort of center of excellence can have is to sort of help users of the technology and other collaborators on AI projects at the sort of spokes of an organization cut through the noise. I can't monitor all the literature out there. I can't monitor all the chatter, and so it's helpful to have someone responsible, help guide me through what I need to pay attention to and what I can ignore. Because there is a lot of hype. I think it's also important as a developer to understand from the outset what this technology it can realistically achieve and what it can't. So again, you don't necessarily go down rabbit holes with no potential outcome if your expectations are too high. So that's why I kind of mentioned starting out with a kind of contained result at first. Obviously, granted that you can demonstrate that it has a true market demand and it solves a pain point in the market. That's a big part of it. And so for me, as someone who operates in the financial industry, given the well-documented limitations large language model have in sort of basic grade school arithmetic, it was a challenge for us, given that a lot of the data we work with, most if not all the data we work with, involves numbers. And so this is something that's well documented, and folks that are building these models are aware of, and they're different ways to sort of get around this, but it's important to sort of start with that limitation in mind, and be able to build in processes to help compensate for some of those limitations, rather than just sort of from the outset assuming that you're going to wave a magic wand and AI is going to be able to do it all for you. That's certainly not the case. I wouldn't recommend getting preparing to receive your universal basic income check anytime soon. There's still going to be need for well-skilled developers and engineers for the foreseeable future. And then I would say, when it comes to limitations as well, keeping the limitations in mind from the outset, there are certain contexts in which AI can't solve the problem because there simply is no data to begin with. There's no data product upstream for it to feed in and be able to produce a response based on. And so the reality is you have to have still humans in the loop. At Moody's, our team is involved quite a bit in sort of the business of creating expert judgment overlays to our quantitative models, right? In line with sort of the well-documented principle that model plus expert judgment outperforms model alone, right? But is there an industry-wide database for expert judgment? No. I mean, that's often sort of intuition that resides in our users' heads. And it's our responsibility to interact at that human level and elicit that expertise and quantify that expertise as best we can, and add it as a sort of non-financial overlay to all the financial data that goes into our models. So it produces better outcomes, but then you achieve better buy-in, because users themselves are much more likely to institutionalize the widespread use of a product that they perceive themselves as having developed themselves. And so people, in terms of creating a successful product, you may have an AI product that performs well, and you can show the graphs, compared to all the different metrics or large language models are subjected to, that it outperforms this, that, or the other. But unless people really have the buy-in, there isn't necessarily going to be success there. So to the extent you can engender this sort of understanding that, yes, this is a model, it will help you perform better, more efficiently, more productively, achieve better outcomes, but it has to be used in concert with your expert judgment, with the human in the loop at all times.
Okay, yeah, so that's interesting that you can have a really high-performing model that gives you brilliant predictions or whatever, and then actually, if no one uses it or no one cares, then it's not going to be very, very useful at all. All right, so we're going to go to audience questions in a moment. Fast-fire answer for the last question is just: do you have any final advice for any organizations wanting to create data products or AI products? Sagar?
Yeah, sure. So first, focus on the paying customer. So choose your data product and the scope of it depending on who the paying customer is. Keep the paying customer in mind. That's important. It's easy to go all over the place. Second, make sure that you have a fixed timeline in mind when you are going to get your MVP out. 3 months, no more than 3. And keep it iterative, which basically means don't even think that after 3 months your investments are you can shut off that investment. If it works, you have to continue to invest to keep it fresh. Remember, it's a product, and it will need investment over a period of time for it to be valuable. So these are the 3 things, in my opinion, that one needs to keep in mind when they're getting on the data products journey.
Okay, nice. And Logan, final advice?
One final parting shot, I'll say, to try to wrap up, and I'll come full circle to Sagar's claim on the importance centrally of engineering skills, which is that programming absolutely matters. When this technology first came to market, there was this notion of we don't need development skills anymore. We can get AI to write all our code. And I'll tell you that's all hype, right? To this point, try giving a programming task to someone who has absolutely no background in this, it will fail. And so those skills are paramount, remain paramount, and don't believe the hype. Invest in keeping those skills sharp, and you'll be successful.
Excellent. Brilliant. Let's go to some audience questions. Actually, before we go to audience questions, we have a ton of webinars next week. So I'll let Reese bring the QR code so you can register for those. Next session is going to be it's going to be on how to build trustworthy AI agents. So if you're interested in building this sort of thing, we got a hands-on code along on Tuesday. We've got some sessions on Java and Tableau, and I think there's one on the EU AI next week as well. All right, excellent. So first question from the audience is from Robert. So I think it must have been from very early on when we were talking about the definition of data products, AI products. So what if you've got algorithmic processes that operate without NLP? So I think when we talk about what's an AI product, generative AI features very heavily there. What if you've not got any text? It's just, I guess, some more traditional AI. Does that count as an AI product?
I don't know if I'm the gatekeeper of the official definition of an AI product. I provided the definition I did because I'm able to speak to that type of use case, because that's where the groundswell of interest at an executive level really started, going back to what was it, November 22, right, when ChatGPT came to market, and so it wasn't until this type of algorithmic technology started sort of intruding on the space of liberal arts majors and things like that there started to become a lot of buzz, right? And so that's, I think, typically, where I think casual observers in the industry would sort of draw the line at defining what an AI product is. But absolutely by no means does that have to be the definition. There's a whole host of other AI products that have been brought to market prior to the commercialization of LLMs and ChatGPT. I can't necessarily speak to those because I'm somewhat of a new entrant to the game here, as I mentioned. But absolutely, I think there is a broader definition that is valid, and that I would say most of the principles, if not all, that we've explored today and discussed would still apply to.
Okay, yeah. So if you're using traditional AI like machine learning, then I think that counts as an AI product or machine learning product. Call it what you want. All right. Next question comes from Alex. So Alex says, "What would you say are the core competencies of data product? Say mitigating risk, analyzing trends in the markets." So I think this is about the business impacts of data products. And Sagar, you mentioned a few, like you can make it easier to upsell to your customers, things like that. Do you just want to reiterate, like, what are the main business impacts from having data products?
So any use case that is valuable to business and that requires data, and that requires you to make sure that the consumption of that data is needs to be fresh. You need to know where the data is coming from. It is well governed. That is a valuable data product for you. So it doesn't matter whether it is for risk reduction, whether it is for cost reduction, or whether it is for revenue enhancement. It doesn't matter. It is a valuable data product. You're using a data set with metadata, with the code, with the underlying infrastructure all baked in. So yes, it does. It is a valuable data product.
All right, excellent. Yeah, so I guess pick whatever the business metrics most important to you, and then there's probably a data product that's going to help with that.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Next question is from Brandon. So Brandon says the lion's share of AI seems to be centered around large language models, retrieval augmented generation, chatbots, etc. What other areas and industries are underserved by AI, and how can we better serve them with AI? So I guess this is again like going beyond this sort of generative AI hype. What other bits of AI can you make use of and in order to benefit your business, I guess? I don't know who wants to take this. Sagar, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, sure. I think we've focused too much on the external world and the customer world, and that's where data products have emerged to begin with. But the underserved folks are the internal folks. So if you are in a manufacturing setting, for instance, people are still struggle to figure out, and you are in a large manufacturing organization which has maybe 25, 30, or maybe 300 plants, the operational efficiency of the plant is computed differently in different parts of the organization. 90% of the time when plant managers come together to meet up with the VP operations, they squabble over what their operational efficiencies are and negotiate over the numerators and denominators of a certain metric. The data product and the product thinking onto data basically clarifies all of that, because now the model has been baked into the data product. You're using a much better version of the output, and then you are having a discussion on operational efficiencies, and your meeting is more successful. Now, in I'm just giving you a very pedestrian example of it, but just to bring this concept uh, into an enterprise takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of data wrangling, and for people to come together and uh, come to a common perspective as to what should the numerator and denominator be and what should the model be. So internal focused and internal efficiency related data products have been largely underserved. AI can definitely push things forward in a significant way that drives competitiveness for organizations. People are only looking at this point in time as headcount reduction, but it doesn't need to be that way. And so there are several such areas that we are currently working on that helps compress timelines, that helps bring faster go-to-market for for product companies and so on. So yeah.
That's interesting. So your example of different managers arguing about operational efficiency in a factory, it's actually very familiar. We used to have the same discussion at DataCamp about like how to attribute people buying DataCamp. And I'm like, if they came to a webinar, then they bought DataCamp. Definitely because they came to the webinar. And yeah, and all the other teams argue that it's whatever they were doing is the reason. So yeah, I can see how data products be useful to help solve those arguments, stop people squabbling. So this question comes from like someone with the best username, Dragon Dagger Super Poison, says, what are your thoughts on the topics related to on what we discussed related to the health sector, where privacy is extremely important and there are immense restrictions on data sharing and access? So I think with Moody's, you must have the same problem with financial and sensitive business data. How do you deal with privacy in the context of data and AI products?
Yes, I mean, this is a question that obviously came up very early in our kind of engagement with this technology. There's certainly concern that folks, a company that maintains a lot of proprietary data and stakes a lot of its market value on those data sets, that its employees are feeding those data sets into like a browser-based version of ChatGPT to get your automated analysis that gets then distributed out on the internet. So it was very early on that we started working with various LLM vendors to host ring-fenced versions of those models that that we could send data to without the risk that it would sort of get out there in the larger internet. And that's become fairly standard. Most large companies now have their own kind of ring-fenced LLMs to prevent that kind of thing from happening. And we've now expanded on that, or it's not just a sort of off-the-shelf LLM. We have built-in tools for RAG processes and even fine-tuning that are all ring-fenced. So there's a whole host of issues when it comes to data security, privacy, the ethics and governance of AI that folks that operate in, again, going back to that hub and spoke model. Folks at the hub are really the ones primarily responsible for addressing and finding solutions for. I am a little bit more sort of on the consumer end of the technology, so I don't myself worry about that day to day, although as any responsible user, you do have to concern yourself to some degree. But an institution has to have someone absolutely that's responsible and accountable for that type of privacy and security.
All right, yeah. So really, you just got to make sure you think through all the issues properly. There are technical solutions to that. There are process solutions to dealing with privacy. So you've got to make sure like you've thought through all the issues. Excellent. All right. I hadn't realized we've run over by several minutes. I was enjoying myself so much. I feel like we could have chatted for hours on this topic. It's just so interesting. But we're going to have to wrap up there. So just thank you once again, Sagar. Loads of great answers. Thank you, Logan. Loads of great answers there. I really enjoyed this discussion. Thank you to Reese for moderating. Thank you to everyone who asked a question. Sorry we didn't get to them all. Thank you to everyone who showed up today. So many great sessions coming up in the next couple of weeks. Please do use the QR code to register for them. I hope to see you all again.